All right, LeBron is your number one in the last 50 years.
Yep.
Everyone, of course, agrees with you. Nobody's saying anything about it.
Uh-huh.
What's the most compelling argument that you've heard against LeBron at number one? And now that you're done with the list, would you like a do-over? Be honest.
Oh, okay. Well, let's start with the most so there's the top 50 players. There is Jalen and Jacoby, my dear friend. I shouldn't call them my dear friends, but I do. I consider both of them friends, Jalen Rose and, of course, Dave Jacoby, chiming in saying not on a Sunday. There's Torrey Smith, former great receiver with the Ravens, some other teams, sending the great wire gif, Weebay saying, wow, okay, about the list. So before I talk about any potential regrets, let me discuss the biggest and most legitimate argument against LeBron being number one is, if you look at Kareem and Michael, neither one of them ever had anything close to the 2011 finals on their resume. And the question is the 2011 finals disqualifying? Can you be the best ever if you have that type of moment on your resume that cost your team a championship? I obviously believe the answer is yes. I think his body of work before that, and most notably his body of work in the decade since that, makes it, and the totality of it, makes that a part of his story, but not even close to the defining part of his story. And I actually think there is, now this is being very generous, but the most generous reading of it is because of that moment, the guy who came into the league more hyped than anyone, with more pressure than any athlete ever when they arrived to the league as a teenager, all of a sudden had even more pressure in the midst of his career because he had that failure and had to overcome it. That I don't even know that I fully believe that. That would be the most generous reading of it. However, I do think that if you simply say the 2011 finals are disqualifying, that if LeBron had won 8 consecutive NBA titles, it wouldn't have mattered. I disagree with you, but that is to me a fair critique. Okay. That if you're going to be the greatest ever, you shouldn't have that moment. It's not how I view it, but that to me is a fair argument. A lot of the other arguments are just nonsense. The idea that because Michael Jordan has a Defensive Player of the Year award, that he was a better defender than LeBron. You can argue he was a better defender than LeBron. I think you're wrong, but you can make that argument. But the fact that Michael won it in the late 80s and LeBron came in second, was 3 votes short of winning it in 2013, that doesn't move me. That's not resonant. Yeah. The Michael Jordan, the never losing in the finals, has never been as relevant to me as it is to other people, because guy played 15 seasons in the league and won 6 titles. So he lost at some point. Right. There were losses. They just came earlier than later. Those things don't move me. But if you want to say the 2011 finals is disqualifying, that's fine. Go ahead. You want to say something? I can say.
No, I mean, I think the 2011 finals being disqualifying, I think that him not folding, I think that it was easy for him to fold after that.
Well, that's the point.
Came back even harder.
Well, and the very next year they're down 3-2 to Boston. He has the second best game of his career. And so again, that's kind of part of the story. And by the way, if it were myth making or fiction instead of sports, you would have that moment. If this were a movie, you would have that moment and then overcoming it and all of that. Yeah. Okay, now, as far as regrets on the list, I don't really have regrets on the list. However, there are some things that I would like that if I were to do it right now, I would adjust. Okay? First one is this. If I had done the list knowing that Jokić was going to win a second MVP, he's got to be on there. Bernard King gets bumped, he gets on there. It's not right.
Even though, how much you were saying that he shouldn't have gotten the MVP again?
Correct. I don't think he should have gotten the MVP. But I've got to base it on what guys... Now, much like with Nash has 2 MVPs. I have him 40th behind a bunch of guys who never won MVP and a bunch of guys who only won 1 MVP. So it doesn't mean that I have to put him any higher than 47th on the list. But by virtue of winning 2 of them, I wouldn't have left him off. However, again, I did that part of the list and debuted it and did the video and all of that before he won the second MVP. I have had a lot of pushback on Sidney Moncrief. I do not regret that at all. Bill Walton is a tough one because his window was so short, but I think I got that one right. Kawhi is a guy that when I look back at it, I say, could I have had Kawhi a little higher?
Right. That's what I was thinking.
And you can convince me that when it comes to, let me find a for instance, with Kawhi, who has Kawhi in a short period of time made at least an equal impact on winning and on the league as, for instance, Jason Kidd did? I think the answer to that's probably yes, even though Kidd did it for such a long period of time. Right. Is there an argument for Kawhi over Patrick Ewing and those guys in the mid-late 20s? There probably is. And so maybe I would adjust Kawhi. And the one thing everyone is assuming I'm going to say is
LeBron at 1 and your top.
No, what everyone's thinking I'm going to say is Luka. Luka at 20.
Okay.
And the point that I would make in defense of the Luka ranking is this. The list, I believe, would look foolish in 2 years' time if Luka isn't on there. By putting him as high as I did, it made it clear that his was the one spot that was pure projection. He had, and listen, second most points per game in his career of anyone in the NBA playoffs. He's already a 3-time first-team All-NBA guy. He's already 3-time top 5 MVP finisher. He's done a lot of things. Right. His playoff numbers are, I believe, I haven't looked, but I believe if you add points, rebounds, and assists per game together is one thing. So if you average 25, 10, and 5, that's 40. 25 plus 10 plus 5. I think Luka's points, rebounds, assists per game in the playoffs are the highest of any player in league history. Okay? So I think the Luka ranking, like I think he's obviously accomplished a lot, but not nearly enough to be included on the list yet, and not nearly enough, obviously, to be at 20. The reason I feel good about him being at 20 is because if I had put Luka at 46, I think it would look like I was saying he already is the 46th best player.
Yeah.
By putting him at 20, it's so clear I am not arguing he has accomplished more than Chris Paul already has.
Right.
I'm saying this is where he is going in order to be a top 20 player. So the short version is maybe a couple tweaks. One has to do with the fact that, the NBA calendar didn't cooperate. One has to do with maybe, just maybe, I underrated Kawhi a touch. But for the most part, I think I did an A+ job. I think it is the definitive and best ranking of NBA players that anyone's ever put together. And I think
heard it here first.
That I deserve massive credit for having the courage to give respect to Kareem, even at the expense of everyone's idol, Michael Jordan. Now let's move on. What's next?
Very respectable of you.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button to get more from the show, and make sure to click the bell to get notified every time new content drops. Check out full episodes of What's Right wherever you get your podcasts, or just click the link in the description below.